Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to my power scaling series in which I'm going to be going through the entire Cell saga of Dragon Ball Z from start to finish. If you guys are interested, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and enable all notifications, as well as hitting like and hyping this video up so that you'll be able to see every single one of these videos in this series right away when they come out. And in case that you missed some of the series along the way, make sure to check the end screen of this video when it's over so that you'll be able to in turn go to that playlist and see everything else leading up to this. Now, before we begin, I also wanted to tell you about my book series, The Children of Aman, beginning with the first book, Nemesis of the Absence, a story of thieves who band together in the name of vengeance, using the fundamental forces of creation wielded by the main character, Seraph, a speaker. And you get to see a lot of things such as action, adventure, fight scenes, romance, cool powers, and that much more along the way. So if you're interested, make sure to go down below in the description and get your own copy, physical or digital, today. But with that being said, let's get directly into scaling the Cell Saga. The Cell Saga in the manga begins with, well, the arrival of two characters. We got Frieza, the main villain of the last arc, whose cells are, of course, used for Cell. And then, of course, we also have his daddy, Big King Cold right here, right? The king, the former emperor of the universe, before his son stepped in. And that's where we first really begin with a lot of this stuff. As we see, we get a lot of the characters flying forth in order to confront these two characters. And here are some of our first statements about their power. We have Gohan talking to Krillin, and I'm just going to pronounce it Krillin because it's too hard to pronounce it Kuririn, or however it's supposed to be in the Japanese. And what does he say? It feels like Frieza, and there's another key with him that feels the same way. Now, in the anime version, I believe that there actually is a line which is talking about this with Tien saying it as well. But in the manga, it's Krillin and Gohan, and Krillin essentially confirms this right here. He says that it's pretty tough to miss a key that huge, So essentially, they're comparing the power of King Cold to Frieza. There's another huge key along with him. Later on, of course, what happens? Well, let's keep going. We'll see that when the two of them touch down, we begin to have other characters talking about how they sense their power, why they're actually there, and so on and so forth. Now, when they arrive and touch down, everybody is talking about how insanely more powerful these characters actually are. But here is another little statement when it comes to King Cold and Frieza that might tip it in one direction or another. That's not all. He gets much, much stronger than that. This is what Gohan is saying. Gohan, of course, fought against Frieza. He sensed every single form that Frieza had on Namek at the time, and thus as a result, he has a better idea and understanding of their strength comparative to one another. So this is where we get into the first question in terms of these antagonists that are right here, and just how powerful they actually are with King Cold and Frieza. Is King Cold as strong or maybe even stronger than Frieza? After all, we see that he's in this form, or in a form that looks like second form Frieza, and then we have Mecha Frieza right here. Now, it is worth noting that Mecha Frieza makes mention shortly hereafter, where he actually talks about how he is stronger than he was when he was on Namek. Because with the robotic enhancements that he has been given after his body was rebuilt after Goku defeated him as a Super Saiyajin, a Super Saiyan, well, guess what happened? He became even stronger. He was already the strongest naturally born being in the universe, potentially, but he became stronger than this. However, I think that you can argue, some people have over time, that maybe this guy right here, King Cold, is somewhat comparative to Frieza's power. Is he stronger, though? Personally, when you go in and you read the manga and you watch the anime, I think that some of the implications are that he is not as powerful as Frieza. First off, we don't actually know if King Cold can transform. I've done specific dedicated videos over the years about both of these characters, King Cold and Frieza's powers comparative to each other. I've additionally done videos talking about can King Cold transform and just how strong was he. Personally, I would say that he is not as powerful as Frieza, his son, that we could see right here, when he is standing right next to him. Now, what about compared to Namek? Again, I don't think so, because look at the ordering, and this tends to be very important when it comes to power scaling in the manga. Look at the ordering of the statements, because first off, when they're flying here, they talk about how strong the other key is that's with Frieza, which of course is King Cold. They say at first that he feels like Frieza. He feels the same way. This could mean either the same power or, the same kind of evil, the same kind of family they're a part of, whatever. We see this later on when Trunks transforms. Now, with that being said, again, look at what is said when Yamcha is sensing the power of both the fighters, and he talks to Gohan about this. He again says, Frieza, you mean to tell me that he has a key this unbelievably huge? And then Gohan says, that's not all. He gets much, much stronger than that. So that implies to me right then and there that King Cold is not as powerful as Frieza. He is as powerful as whatever Frieza's current suppressed level of strength is. And thus, as a result, his power level is still somewhere in the millions, maybe tens, maybe 100-ish million, who knows, 80 to 100 million if you want to include power levels. I know people quote Team 4-Star all day, every day about that. But either way, you will get that statement, that implication that Frieza probably is stronger than his father, probably already was on Namek because of the fact that, Gohan says he gets much, much stronger. And thus, years ago, I think I gave King Cold his own power level of maybe around 80 million. Let's say something like that. Now, it's hard to say just how much stronger Frieza is. So for all we know, King Cold's power level is even less than that. Maybe it's low millions, if that. But Frieza does say right here that if the two of us work together, we're sure to defeat him. Now, if King Cold's power level was like 1% of Frieza's, then that wouldn't make any difference. Like if Frieza thinks that he is strong in terms of close to Goku's level of power. Keep in mind that he's referencing Goku on Namek, not post-Yardrat, which we'll get to soon. And not just that, but additionally, also the fact that he is not somebody who could sense power levels. Maybe he has this built-in scouter right now in his components that you could see, but he couldn't sense Goku's power. He just fought him. And Goku at that point, just like Frieza, they were pretty much exhausted. So you can argue that neither one was actually at full power. In fact, you can go on my channel and see another video about did Goku and Frieza actually fight at full power, where I think that there's a strong argument that they did not. And if they could, then they would have done so at a, shortened degree, not just the less than 5 minutes it took for them to, have their battle and stuff after Frieza blasts the planet. So either way, we then go on to see who arrives. Well, that would have to be the arrival of Mirai Tarankasu as I blow out all your speakers. Fortunately, today, I am wearing my my inspiration for Trunks, which is the shirt bearing my favorite video game character from my favorite video game franchise, Link. And while Trunks is very much like him, a hero of time, except for in Dragon Ball Super, where he's just kind of a failure of time. But anyway, as we keep going, we see this guy shows up. Now, in the Cell Saga, power levels, Toriyama did away with them. He really did away with them at the end of Frieza's arc, on Namek, essentially. In that arc, Frieza, he had a power level of over 1 million in his second form, and that's really the last power level we're actually given. There are guides, which for instance will have the guide saying that Goku's base power level was 3 million when he went to fight against Frieza, that his power level increased by 50 times with Super Saiyan to 150 million, whereas Frieza's final form was 120. So we can keep that in mind, but when they go to scan his power level, it says right here it's a 5. This is the last ever power level we actually get other than Kiri ratings, the Killies in the Buu Saga. So with regard to that, of course, Trunks is suppressing his power output down to the absolute minimum. He's tricking them, and also because of the fact that he's able to suppress himself so that he doesn't waste any energy, something that becomes extremely important as this arc goes on. He goes, he effortlessly kills these weak soldiers. They probably have power levels, honestly, in the thousands, so they're not weak compared to the vast majority of the universe, but they're weak compared to our fighters right now. They're just here as eye candy, kind of like in the prequels where the Jedi just slice and dice all the droids and stuff, except for when the plot says they shouldn't, in order to look cool. And Trunks definitely does. He's slicing and dicing every single android right here. Then he steps up to fight against King Cold and Frieza, saying that he's going to be able to kill them and that he is also a Super Saiyan. Awesome scene. Battle Point Unlimited play in the background, guys. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. And then here we go. Now at this point, we have Frieza fights against Trunks. And, well, when their battle happens, especially in the manga version, it does not last long at all. Frieza gets annoyed, and Trunks at this point was saying, go full power against me. Use everything you got, and I'm going to kill you. Now, let's keep in mind when he is saying this, Frieza in the manga does not seem to really listen at all. He fires one blast, and then he just assumes that he won. And so Trunks uses his cool move where he does all the hand motions, which I believe are a callback to, of course, I'm going to butcher this name, was it Bodhisattva, something like that, which is the kind of Buddhist idea, the Eastern mythologies in their beliefs idea of gathering the latent ki from within your body and using different hand motions in order to get it to essentially kind of flow into your hands that you could then in turn do this move that Trunks is doing right near here, which I think is the burning attack, maybe burning attack, but maybe that's another one. Names have never been my strong suit unless it's Cell, and then I could talk about that all day. But either way, the fact is that we got right here, we got Trunks using this attack, and at that point, Frieza jumps up in the air distracted. Trunks chops him in half, and then slices and dices him after that point and vaporizes his body. So the manga, way faster pacing generally than the anime. I mean, obviously, right? But even beyond that, well, was Frieza really going full power here? Personally, I don't think so. That's another little thing that a lot of people have questioned over the years. Just how much stronger is Trunks really than Frieza here as Mecha Frieza? Now, that's a question again as well. See, obviously, if Frieza went full power, wouldn't you see the same sort of thing that's happening right here with Trunks? Sure, he has robotic enhancements, but he does not drape himself in his ki aura like Trunks is doing. He does not stand there and scream and power up. This is my full power, 100%. He doesn't do anything like that. He just fires one attack at Trunks. He gets pissed off. He fires a blast. That's it. That's not his full power as far as I'm concerned. So, we know that Frieza is stronger, right? So with that being said, how much stronger is he? Is he multiple times stronger, or is he slightly stronger? Personally, I would lean more in the slightly stronger direction. That's one thing you're going to be seeing throughout the course of this video. I don't personally think that all the characters get millions of times stronger in this arc, or even as strong in terms of multipliers as they did in the previous one. Instead, I think that as the characters generally got stronger, well, their powers didn't necessarily continue to balloon exponentially. And so with regard to Frieza's power, he was already 120 million. I could see him maybe being closer to Goku's power on Namek. So let's say 140 million, something like that. He didn't really know how strong Goku's power level was. He didn't actually sense him. He fought him, and Frieza is an extremely arrogant character in the first place. So I could see him still being weaker than Goku on Namek and thinking he could beat him because, well, he's the one who Vegeta lived under for years, and both of them are really great at pointing their thumbs at themselves and saying that they're going to win, and then they get whooped, harder than, I don't know, Charlie Murphy when he faced Prince in a basketball game. And so as a result, what's going to happen? Well, they lose. And so I would say that personally, in terms of power levels, if we're judging right here, I would say that maybe Trunks is a little stronger than Goku was on Namek, and that Frieza, of course, is probably weaker. I would say that Trunks' power level I've often viewed as being somewhere around maybe 170 million. And Frieza's maybe 140 million. Maybe, hey, you could say it's 160 million. You could say that Trunks really caught this dude off guard and he killed him because he didn't go full power. Even in the anime, Because people will always point out the anime where Frieza goes, oh, this is my full power. And he does like the finger beam and he drops a giant ball of death on him. Frieza used that attack when he had 530,000 power level and he blew up Planet Vegeta. That doesn't mean anything. Him using a giant blast does not mean he's at full power or really trying as much as he did against Goku on Namek. And so that's the way I see it. Trunks was stronger than full power Frieza, but if he really tried as hard as he could, and so did King Cold, and they fought him at the same time, he would have a much harder time beating them than he did right here. Trunks did not hold back. He went full power and sliced and diced and murdered Frieza right in front of his father. And then, well, he goes on and do the same thing to King Cold. Now, I do want to point something out here. When Trunks first powers up and goes Super Saiyan as well, we have a statement again about the quality of ki and the type of energy. And so Gohan thought that Trunks was actually his father because it was the same ki that his dad had back then. So again, one thing to keep in mind is that in Dragon Ball, it's not always power level that they're referencing here. It could be the actual tangible feeling of ki. We actually see this later on with Cell. That's how they could recognize who a character is. And also sometimes when the character changes in terms of their mentality, in terms of their spirit, like Gohan the Buu Saga, for instance, when he gets Ultimate, and then he starts flying toward the characters, they have no idea who he is, not because the ki necessarily is like, it's always Gohan, it's always the same thing, it's power level. No, it's because he has changed as a human being as well, and thus the feeling of his ki along with the energy also changed. When you're a Super Saiyan, you have like Super Saiyan ki. That's why they glow yellow in the anime version, and also certain versions of this. Like in this, originally Toriyama had them have white hair with red eyes, which I think would have been cool to keep that. But personally, the golden look is still iconic. Either way, I think that you could argue that maybe this means that he was around the power level of Goku on Namek if you take that literally. But at the same time, I think that there's an argument to be made, of course, that he is stronger, I would say so, and that Gohan sensed the feeling of the Super Saiyan ki. At this point in time, we do have King Cold steps down to fight against Frieza's killer, Trunks, and he offers him the role of being the new strongest being in the universe. So that, again, tells us that King Cold is weaker than his son, and that Trunks is also, well, obviously way stronger than King Cold. At this point in time, he thinks that it's just because of Trunks' sword that he was able to beat him. And what happens? Well, Trunks kills him with ease. He literally stops the sword in his hand. Of course, he is draped in aura when he does this. In the anime version, he's not for whatever weird reason. I think it's because of how Toei misunderstands how Toriyama actually sets up how his in-universe powers work. Because, typically, when Trunks swings his sword, he's imbuing it with ki. It's not just because he's really strong physically. It's because he's placed ki into the blade. Well, same thing is happening here. He puts up his defenses and his aura, grabs that blade in his hand, and thus he is not going to have his hand cut through by a guy who has millions of power level, as he would if he wasn't really trying in that case. In the anime, again, they try to make him look even more badass, but I think it doesn't really make as much sense as how it's explained. Plus, there's no begging about this here either. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to stay tuned for the next episode of this power scaling series of the Cell Saga. Also, get your own copy today of my first book, Nemesis of the Absence, the first in the Children of Mon series, because of course, as I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future. Trunks. Future Trunks.
And you better subscribe!